Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Literally Me podcast. My name is Dino, and I'm joined by my amazing friend and co-host Tristan. Tristan, how are you, man?
I'm doing all right, Dina. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Bit of a stressful week, but it's getting better.
Yeah, it's looking up.
It's looking up,
All
thankfully.
right. Well, that's all that matters. I'm excited to be back on. It's been a little while since we've spoken, maybe about 2 weeks since we
Been a while,
recorded the
yeah.
last episode.
Yeah.
Um, but the last episode for anybody who has been listening was Dino's pick for I almost said Shawshank Redemption, Hacksaw Ridge,
Excellent.
similar sounding name, I guess.
For
And
sure.
today's film was my pick, and that was for The Swimmer, which I'm super excited to talk to you um,
Thank you.
about because I know you and I had talked about it for some time
Mhm.
before actually picking it. But before we get into that, what you been watching for the last week or so?
Let me just pull up my letterboxd.
Pull
Um,
it up.
I think last time I mentioned that I was watching, well, the last two episodes that I've been rewatching the Rocky and Creed movies.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
finished those. I watched all of them before watching Creed 3 in
And
theaters.
what were your thoughts? Creed 3.
Creed 3, so it was great. I liked it a lot. I think I think it was Michael B. Jordan's first movie directing,
Oh,
and
he directed it?
he directed it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it's I'm pretty sure it's his first
Interesting.
movie that he
It
directed,
seems like it would be, yeah.
and it was like he is not just incredibly talented and handsome; he's also a very great director,
Interesting.
and I loved it a lot. I think a lot of the stuff he did because he mentioned before that his directing style is very inspired by anime and like anime fights and like sports anime, which I haven't seen a lot of. But you can definitely like just feel the inspiration with those fights. And he used a lot of very interesting stuff. Like it was very unique. He's done something that I haven't seen in any other, not just Rocky or Creed movie, like any other sports and boxing movie. Like a lot of techniques that I just haven't seen and I just loved. And I think he's going to be like a great director in the future. I'm excited to see what he does next. Um, and yeah, I really liked it. I hope maybe one day you get to check it out. If so, you definitely have to let me know like what you think.
Definitely. Like I said, I'm not really all that well versed in Rocky, like the whole universe, I guess.
Yeah,
But what I guess, so I guess, I mean, you saw at least what, almost 10 movies during that. How many movies are there? Like eight, nine, 10?
I think there's 9. I
Okay.
think there's 6 Rocky movies and 3 Creed movies
Creed
now.
movies now.
Yeah,
What would you rank in total, the nine movies? Your
in
top
total,
three, no, your top three. Your top three.
my top 3. That's a tough one. I think I think Rocky 3 would be my number 1.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think I would go with Creed 3 actually.
Interesting. At number two?
Yeah, because I liked it a lot. Maybe it's just because I've seen it recently and it's like so
Yeah.
fresh in my mind,
Yeah.
but I liked it a lot. And I
Damn.
think even if you haven't seen the first two, like the other 6 Rocky movies, I think you can just go in and like you'll understand what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think maybe like you don't even have to watch all of them. Like maybe just check out Creed 3.
Okay. And is the general consensus kind of the same as you? Is everyone sort of really digging this movie a lot?
I think so because like so for context, my phone was broken the last week, so I don't really know. I haven't really seen a lot because I just wasn't on
Yeah.
social media at all. But looking at like the letterbox, I think most people really liked it.
Nice.
So and I really liked it as well. And I think after that, I would go with, that's a tough one. I think maybe Creed 2 or 1. So one of those.
Wow. So these Creed movies, you really are like putting up there in the whole franchise as some
They're
of the
really
best.
great. I mean, I love Rocky. I love those movies, but I just like love the Creed movies as well. And I think they bring something very unique to those boxing movies, especially the third one. Like Michael B. Jordan really did things that I haven't seen done before, especially the last fight. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the things he does in that last fight just blew me away. Like just visually and like the storytelling through the visuals, amazing. So I highly recommend everyone checking it out for
Oh,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. I might have to do a real deep dive, a proper deep dive of the
Mhm.
whole saga, kind of like you, starting at Rocky and then make my way up to Creed 3. I feel
I
like
watched,
it'll probably be in theaters for a little while.
I think so. And it
I
only
can only
just like
imagine.
came out like 2 weeks ago, I think. So
Hmm.
there's still time.
Cool.
Um, and then I watched, well, The Swimmer. We're gonna get into that one later. And I watched The Fablemans 2 days ago in theaters
Oh,
because it
nice.
just
What'd you
came out
think?
over here.
What'd you think?
I loved it. It was
Yeah, I liked it a lot too.
it was amazing. Spielberg is like one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director. And the movie just brought me so much joy,
Hmm.
especially like as someone who wants to get into filmmaking. I think it just touches a lot of like emotions, and you can relate to it. I think you as well. Or what did you?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I really liked it a lot, and I like Spielberg, but I don't like I find that a lot of his movies, and I think I've mentioned this before,
Yeah.
like he will like really just like jump headfirst into like the cheesiness and
Mhm.
it's like he'll still make a great movie where it's like obviously like a pro made this, but it's just oozing with cheese.
Yeah.
But the Fablemans one, I was super interested in checking it out just in general because I'm like, this seems like right up my alley. I heard about the David Lynch cameo as John
Mhm.
Ford. Um, so I was really excited to see it. And then I did see it, and it was like you said, it's kind of just something you really sort of relate to. Um, but I really, really like that movie a lot.
That cameo was great.
I loved that. That was a perfect way
That was amazing.
to kind of cap the end of that movie.
Yeah. And
Um,
speaking of cameos, something I wanted to mention, I forgot about it. Stephen A. Smith is actually in Creed 3.
oh, is he really?
He is, and he has such a funny scene. So for that alone, you have
Oh,
to
that's
check it out.
funny. Okay, I'll that actually that
Yeah.
upped itself in the queue of the watch list for that.
I knew because I wanted to tell you as soon as I saw it, I was like, you're gonna love it. And he
Oh,
wasn't in any of the movies before because Max Kellerman was.
oh, really?
He was in like three of them.
Really?
Like, yeah, he was in like the I think the last two Rocky movies, like Rocky 5 and 6.
Max Kellerman?
Max
Well,
Kellerman, and
I guess those were more recent, right? Rocky 5 and 6, like in the last 10
no, actually,
years.
Rocky 6 is like 2006, and Rocky 5 is 1990. He
Whoa.
was like he was really young, but he was like one of the commentators of that fight.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that
then in
makes
that
sense. So Michael B. Jordan, is he kind of given a wink by putting Stephen A in this one?
for sure because
That's
in the
cool.
2006 one they had Shannon Sharp.
No shit, really?
Yeah, he was like just a really short segment. Like they just show him like
I'm gonna have to
saying
pull
something
these
about
up, dude.
Rocky.
You are, yeah. Hell yeah.
So
I'd love to see
definitely
him
check
up
out.
there.
And Stephen A. Smith gets to talk a lot more than the other two in the previous movies. He has a great scene, and he mentions like he tells him, "You've never been on my show before," so he makes it a joke that he hasn't been in those movies yet.
Yeah.
It's
That's
really
funny.
fun. So,
That's funny. That's really cool. Cool to hear.
yeah,
Um, well, let's take a look. Let me pull up Letterbox and let's see
yeah.
some of the stuff that I
Let's see
checked
what you
out.
watched.
Yeah, in the last week, well, I guess 2 weeks since we've talked, but just in general, I've been on a huge like 90s kind of like thriller kick right now, 90s action sort of thing.
Sounds fun.
Um, so I don't really even know what exactly what exactly even made me want to get into this, but I started watching like all these like Wesley Snipes movies from the 90s. So I saw the movie Drop Zone, which has Gary Busey in it. Have you heard of this movie?
I have not.
It's very cool. It's Wesley Snipes is like like an airline, or like I forget what they're called, but the people like the security dudes who are like on planes,
Hmm.
whatever that job is. And these like hijackers like take over the plane, and oh no, I'm sorry. I'm mistaking it for another Wesley Snipes movie I watched called Passenger 57.
Did you
Both
get
of
them?
them take place on a plane. Both take
Okay.
place on a plane. That's Passenger 57. That was cool. Drop Zone, he's learning how to skydive out of like planes and shit because Gary Busey's like a skydiving thief.
Hmm.
Um, but that movie is very cool and very 90s. And I also watched Blade, which I had never seen.
No
That
way.
was that was a first time watch for me. I'd never seen Blade before.
Did you watch
Um,
last week or when did you watch it?
I yeah, like probably about a week ago today, if I had to guess.
That's funny because I've actually been reading some Blade comics, so
Oh, have you really?
that's a funny coincidence. Yes,
Have you seen the movie?
I have, but it's been such a long time. I haven't seen them all. I don't think I've seen
Okay.
this. I've seen parts of the second one, but I've never seen the third one.
Okay. I've been interested in checking out the second one like this week. I was even thinking about putting it on tonight.
Hmm.
Um, okay, Guillermo del Toro directs the second one,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think is pretty cool. But the first one is dope. Like Wesley Snipes is like a perfect casting for that.
Hmm.
And I was just doing some research just to find out, like I'd never seen even the comics of Blade, but they're rebooting it. Are you aware? I'm sure you're aware.
I am with
And
Mahershala Ali.
Mahershala Ali, I thought
He's
that was
starring.
cool, but I'm curious to know because I had somebody in mind who I was like, when I was watching, I was like, no, he should be the new Blade. And I'm curious to know if, are you cool with the Mahershala Ali, or do you think that maybe there's another actor that could be playing Blade now that could be better suited? I'm just curious to know if you might think the same thing
Mhm.
as me.
I am because I like him a lot, and I
Okay.
think it'll be very interesting. But I'm very curious to hear who you have in mind.
Yeah, which by the way, I like him too. I think he's a good
Mhm.
casting choice, but it was like I put myself in those shoes. I was like, bro, I think Jonathan Majors would be really good in this
Shit,
role.
he
I think he
would.
would be really good as Blake because he's got a little bit more bulk to him, like Wesley Snipes as
Yeah,
well. I'm sure Marshall Ali is going to put on some weight, but he's a little more like his frame is a little bit more thin. But
yeah.
Jonathan Majors is like a thick
He's
dude.
jacked.
Yeah, and especially because he's in Creed 3, is he not?
He is,
Okay.
and
And
he's
I was like,
amazing. And he's just. I can't believe like that's a real human being. He's just so jacked, and
yeah, he's a beast. Like definitely could easily probably be an athlete. Like if
mhm,
acting didn't like work out for him, but I was like when I was thinking about, it, I was like Jonathan Majors. I think would be a very good Blade.
that's interesting. I think
Yeah,
if he wasn't already playing Kang in the Marvel like
is he already
MCU,
in the Marvel universe?
he is. He's playing the
Ah,
new
shit.
like Thanos, basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the main villain of like the next few movies. So
Interesting.
they're building like the next few movies around him. So he's just gonna be like everywhere. He's in the Loki TV show. He was in the first season. He's gonna be in the second season. He was in Ant-Man. He's gonna be in Avengers 5 and 6. So he's like the
Wow.
center of it.
Okay, well then I guess he got his bag, and it
Yeah,
doesn't need to be Blade.
for
But I thought
sure.
he would have been awesome
That's
as
interesting.
as a Blade. And if anyone listening to this agrees, hop in those comments, or drop a comment somewhere and let us know. Um, but yeah, a lot of Wesley Snipes movies: Demolition Man, Boiling Point, White Men Can't Jump. Just a lot of
Nice.
just pumping through these, and
Mhm.
yeah, I'll probably put on some Wesley Snipes later if I don't put on Blade. Well, I guess yeah, that is Wesley Snipes, Blade 2.
I
But
really need to rewatch like the first one and then
dude,
just
it's a
watch the second one, the
bad
third one.
ass. And you know me when it comes to superhero shit, but like if it's old
Mhm.
school for whatever reason, I guess because they didn't
Yeah.
have the whole multiverse thing or whatever,
Mhm.
like, dude, it is. I didn't realize it was Marvel either until it
Mhm.
started.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, he's like a Marvel character. I thought it was like a because Watchmen is not Marvel, right?
that's well,
Or DC?
it's
Isn't it its own thing?
DC, but it's its own thing, but it's under the DC label.
DC affiliated.
But they did a crossover, like Dr. Manhattan built like a well, he interacted with the DC characters recently in like a comic, but
Oh,
it
okay.
still is like its own thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, that's dope. And I was like, they should definitely redo this. And then that's when I found out that they were
Mhm.
redoing it.
I'm
Which do you
excited.
know when his first is it going to be a standalone film? His first appearance? Is he going to pop up in Avengers or something or Ant
We
Man
don't
or
we don't know. I just know that like there's been some development. Like the script wasn't really to their liking. So I think they
okay,
fired the guy who wrote the script or like told him to rewrite it completely.
okay.
I think it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Mahershala Ali because he came to Kevin Feige and told him like, "Here's my Oscar. Like, you know who I am. I just want to do Blade."
Oh, he approached. He's like, I want to be Blade.
He did because I think he's a huge Wesley Snipes fan,
Oh, fuck.
and I think he loved like the original Blade.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Hey, I want to do this," and of course, Kevin Feige said like, "We're gonna do it if you want to do it." Like, of
Oh,
course.
that's sick.
And I think it's gonna be like it's gonna be its own movie, but it's still connected to the larger universe.
For sure. Because I saw that they're doing, I don't know if they're in like they're shooting it currently or they just wrapped or they're about to, but I remember seeing like the movie is like going to happen.
I think they're
But
about
I
to because they rewrote it, and yeah,
okay. I
and they're
wasn't sure if
gonna
maybe he'd make a cameo somewhere else before
yeah,
or something.
that might be the case. So maybe because I don't think he's gonna join the Avengers because they have like their own little team. They call it the
Hmm.
Midnight Suns, and so that's like Ghost Rider, Blade, and like those
Oh,
more mystical
the more
horror.
badass
Yeah,
people in
yeah,
Marvel. Yeah.
for
Ghost
sure.
Rider, aren't they redoing Ghost Rider as well?
I think so.
I think I heard something about that too. Did you like the Ghost Rider movies back in the day?
I I didn't really.
Okay.
I like
Was
the
it
first one when I was
uh
little, but the second
okay.
one not so much.
Because it was, did you read Ghost Rider prior and was that why you're like, I'm not really rocking with this? Or was it you're like, yeah, this is just a very bad movie?
Back then I didn't like I read comic books that but I haven't really read Ghost Rider. It was just more
Okay.
like when he popped up in other comic books, but I
Yeah,
wasn't a huge Ghost Rider fan.
I see.
And I liked the first movie, but the second one I saw it in theaters actually. I was really young, but I it just didn't click with me.
I didn't see the second one. I don't.
Yeah,
Is Peter Fonda the bad guy in Ghost Rider? Isn't he riding a
I
motor?
don't
Like it's
I
like
don't
the
know.
villain is literally like him from Easy Rider, but like as a bad guy or something.
I think that's the first one because in the second one
Okay,
he has like this giant crane thing that he controls.
interesting.
Yeah. But did you hear who like said he wants to play Ghost Rider?
No, who?
Ryan Gosling.
No fucking shit, really?
He said in an interview that he would like to play Ghost Rider. And he right now he's in talks to play a Marvel character. But I think it's someone else. I don't know if it's gonna be Ghost Rider. Maybe it could be. We don't know yet.
That would be sick.
That would be really
That would
great.
be dope. What did you say that the league is called, or the union, the Sun
Midnight Suns.
Midnight Suns? So
Yeah.
that's like Ghost Rider, Blade. That's like an Avengers type of
They deal with more
group.
like mystical stuff.
Okay,
So
but it's
there's
the
like
same thing where it's kind of like a coalition of these
yeah,
heroes, or
yeah, they have
okay.
like
Oh, so Wolverine is in a part of it.
he's just like in the game because a game came out recently.
Oh, I see. I see. I see.
But like in the original comic, I think he was also part of it sometimes.
I
But yeah, it's
see.
like Ghost Rider, Blade. I think Doctor Strange was part of it. Moon Knight. I think Moon Knight is gonna be a part of it for the MCU. And they
Okay.
could go like whichever direction with it. And they're gonna deal with like more mystical stuff, more horror stuff,
Oh,
stopping.
this makes sense. Yeah, the original, I guess, was like Ghost Rider. Or were there two Ghost Riders? It says Ghost Riders.
There's
Um,
multiple. There's multiple
okay,
Ghost Riders.
two, I guess two Ghost Riders, Blade and Morbius.
Okay,
Makes
interesting.
sense. I need to see that combo. I need to see Jared Leto back in the saddle.
I think I think he's done with the role.
I cannot believe that they actually brought that movie back into theaters. That was the funniest trend on
Mhm.
film bro meme accounts, like that whole culture. That was the funniest trend
That was so fun.
ever.
And they did a petition to bring it back a third time. That was so funny. It was so funny. And I think Sony almost fell for it. So
That is hilarious. The internet once again is
mm,
undefeated. Um, but before we move on and start to finally talk about the movie that we're here to talk about, I figured we'd take a quick detour and maybe talk a little Oscars. I think that's
mhm.
what, at least in the film world, at least the big thing that happened between our last episode and now. Dino, did you get a chance to watch?
I didn't. I don't really watch the Oscars.
Okay.
Not a big fan of them, but I'm still excited to discuss it.
And what have you ever watched it and then there came a point where you're like, I'm done with this, or you're always just kind of been like, don't really care?
I've always been like, I don't really care.
Uh-huh.
I'm fine with like them like selecting movies and them winning Oscars and things like that, awards, but it's just more like because every year people get mad
Yeah.
and like every year people are just like disappointed or mad at it. And I'm like I'm glad they win and like they get recognition. But at the same time, just because a movie wins doesn't mean that I have to like it or it has to be my favorite movie of that particular year.
Yeah.
I think some people just like don't really understand that. I think like, oh, why did this movie get Best Picture? It shouldn't have. Where I'm like, well, because those people like that movie, that doesn't mean that you have to like it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I kind of feel the same way because I don't really respect the Oscars, yet I still watch every year.
Mhm.
Just because I'm like, I feel like I gotta watch because it's like our day. It's like the Super Bowl. Like it could be like the
Mhm.
battle of the most like unlikable teams. Like it could be the Rams and Chiefs, like the most unlikable two teams, and I will still watch. Like
Yeah.
even though I'm like, I hate this, I'm just gonna hate watching everything about this. I will
Mhm.
still watch. Um, and I kind of feel the same way about the Oscars. But the one thing that I really realized about the Oscars this year was
Mhm.
that they kind of, in and of itself, have become their own sort of movie. Like they are the same as a lot of the movies they're nominating, in that I noticed this year that like what's popular in like movies now and like films are the trends of what like are like sequels, or like a sequel after like 20, 30 years,
Mhm.
reboots,
Yeah.
um things like that, because there's like a lot of nostalgia, and there's, you can bank on that and make a lot of money because people want that. And it's always awesome. Like I'm not even knocking it. I'm like, that is cool. Like I do get the
Mhm.
chills when I see Tobey Maguire pop up in that Spider-Man movie with Andrew Garfield and Tom and Willem Dafoe. Like it's like,
Yeah.
but then there came a point where I'm watching the Oscars and I realized when Ki Wong, uh, short round from Indiana Jones, Ki
Mhm.
Wong
Yeah.
Kut, I knew when he won Best Supporting Actor, I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting to see the rest of this evening.
Mhm.
Because one, I'm very happy he won for sure.
Sure.
I'm
Me too.
super happy. I didn't want, and like I wanted him to win.
He
Now, do
deserves
I?
it.
Yes. Now that I didn't expect him to win though. I did not
Mhm.
expect him to win at all. And then there came a point where then Brendan Fraser pops up. And I'm like, I would like for him to win. I love Brendan Fraser. He's so likable. Does he deserve it? I don't know. That's neither here nor there. I
Mhm.
don't know if he does. But when he won, again, was not expecting it. But when I saw that he won, I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
That was
I'm
awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, this is going to be really interesting. So now it became just predictable. Now when Jamie
Mhm.
Lee Curtis is not, I'm like, Jamie Lee Curtis is going to win this shit. That's for sure. She
Yeah.
won. Although I think that was before Brendan Fraser, but same thing. When Michelle Yeoh was not, I'm like, she's going to win. She like it'll for another story. And then when it came to the final Best Picture, and they announced at the commercial beforehand, they said,
Mhm.
presenting the award for Best Picture, Harrison Ford. I knew for a fact Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is going to win because the
Mhm.
Oscars will not give up the opportunity to have Short Round reunited with Indy on their stage,
That's true.
handing him an Oscar. And I knew in that, I'm like, the Oscars became so predictable. And now the Oscars, it's just like these movies. It's just another reboot. You're just trying to be like, oh my
Mhm.
God, Brendan Fraser, it's a great story. And like you said, you didn't watch, but you saw all these things still and heard.
I
And
saw and I was very happy. Like
yeah,
even like I don't really care, but just seeing those people in those movies win
yeah,
made me happy. Like I can't
yeah,
deny it. Like it was great.
yeah. And like my mom, for it, like who doesn't watch or like didn't watch, she's like, "Oh, I saw Harrison Ford. He was hugging the young boy from."
Mhm.
I was like, "They won." I was like, "That's what they were trying to do. They didn't care. They
Yep.
wanted the photos to go viral, so that way, like you said, it is awesome. Like I am
Mhm.
happy that I got to see that moment. I'm happy Brendan Fraser won. I'm happy Key won. Um, Jamie Lee Curtis, I don't think really deserved that at all, but um, and I don't think a lot of people agree that she
Yep.
did deserve it. But what it, the thing is that I'm just like, oh, the Oscars became very predictable, and they've been like this for a long time. But this was just the most blatant example
Mhm.
of it.
It was
Um,
also a year where like normally like after the Oscars, like when I go in like on social media, everyone
yeah,
is just like mad. But
yeah,
this year, except for like the Jamie Lee Curtis one,
yeah.
people were happy
People were so happy.
and deservingly so because Brandon Fraser, he just deserves the world. So I'm just happy he's like
Yes,
he gets like the recognition he just deserves.
I completely agree. My only thing is I'm just like, you better give it to him because he actually deserves it, and not because you're using him
Yep.
because you know it'll get clicks or you know the photo will go around and people will tune in next year or whatever your reasoning is to get buzz for the academy.
Yep.
Um,
Have you
Kind of like
seen The
when,
Whale?
yes, I did see it. Has it
Oh,
been
okay.
released over there?
It hasn't. I wanted to
Oh,
watch
okay.
it. I think it's out right now, but I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I really have to.
Definitely check it out. It's
Yeah.
worth seeing. I mean, he's fantastic. I think the movie is fine, but he is fantastic.
So,
Um,
in your opinion, he deserves it for his role?
I'm trying to think who else was nominated for Best Actor. Um, it would have been what other movies came out this year? I know Austin Butler from Elvis.
Yeah.
Um, okay, here it is. Colin Farrell, Banshees of Inisherin, Paul Mescal, After Sun, and Bill Nye from Living. Now, I never saw After Sun, so I don't know. I didn't think Colin Farrell. Have you seen Banshees of Inisherin?
I haven't just released on Disney Plus over here. So I'm
Okay,
gonna watch it probably this week or next week.
okay. I liked that movie actually.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed it. I don't think he should have won best. Like I didn't think he was going to win. I didn't. I
Mhm.
thought it was going to be Austin Butler as Elvis. I thought he was going to win,
Me too, but like
which I've not
beforehand,
seen. I've not seen the movie, but I still thought he was going to win.
I haven't either, but like everyone was talking about it.
Yeah,
So I thought like,
yeah.
oh yeah, he's gonna win. So
I thought so too. And what I had seen, I'm like, this is just unbelievable. Like
mhm.
even outside the context of the film, I was
Yeah.
like, this is just incredible. But um, I'm happy they actually gave it to Brendan Fraser. Like I said, I did not expect that. I did not
Mhm.
expect them to actually reward him. I thought the nom would have been enough,
Yeah. So
but
it wasn't predictable until like that one thing happened, and then you like realized,
it
okay.
it was when Key won, where I'm
Mhm.
like, this seems like something's amiss here. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm so happy for him. I didn't think he was going to beat Brendan Gleeson, Judd Hirsch, Brian Tyree Henry. I didn't think he
Mhm.
was going to beat all those people because I thought they were all great in what they did. Like Judd Hirsch in The Fablemans is an amazing. It's a
Mhm.
very small part, but he's freaking awesome
So
in that
great.
movie.
So
He's
great.
so good. And Brendan Gleeson, you'll see when you watch Banshees, is very he
Mhm.
shits all over Colin Farrell in that, like in terms of performance. Like he did a great job,
I'm
and Barry
excited.
Keoghan as well.
I think I'm gonna watch Elvis as well.
I am too. I'm curious, especially now.
I think I'm gonna watch it this week or like next week for sure.
hmm well, any other thoughts on the Oscars? Anything else that you might have seen or heard about before we finally jump into the swimmer?
Well, one more thing, one thing I didn't mention what I saw last week. I watched Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and that won Best
Oh,
Animated
best
Film, I think.
animated film. Yeah.
Yeah, did
I
you?
was that Guillermo's first Oscar? Because he seemed very emotional.
I think his first Oscar since like what?
Pan's
It's
Labyrinth
been a
or
while.
something.
Didn't
Oh,
he get
Shape of
one for?
Water. He got for Shape of Water
Yeah,
for sure. That was like 5 years
and
ago.
Labyrinth, I think. Pan's
Pan's
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth for sure.
Yeah, but like,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, he's got
but-
some for sure.
yeah. Did you watch his Pinocchio?
No, I haven't. I heard it was
Okay,
very good though.
it was freaky, but good. It was very like
It was good though.
it was good. It was
Okay.
good for sure. Just like very creepy.
Okay. Interesting. Because of the style of the puppetry or just like the
Yeah,
story in general or
because of
both?
the style. Because I still prefer like the Disney Pinocchio, just because like it looks cuter. But this one was still very good. But like, yeah, the puppets and like just the designs of everyone just very creepy. But it's supposed to look that way, and it looked
Yeah.
great.
I'll have to check it out because Pinocchio is even the original is kind of creepy.
He is the original
Like
story, like before Disney
the
did it. Like,
even the Disney when all those kids turn into donkeys, that scared me back in the day. That
true,
was
yeah.
freaky. That really freaked me out back in the day.
And the funny thing is, like, I think a day or two after the movie, I went to a restaurant with my girlfriend. The restaurant
Mhm.
was called Pinocchio.
Oh
And like
really?
it wasn't planned, and there was like pictures of Pinocchio on the walls.
Oh
It was
really? It was just like a Pinocchio themed restaurant.
yes. And like they had like
That's
pictures on the wall, like just depicting these important moments of his story. So one
yeah.
where he was like drafted to the military, one here where he was in school, things like that.
That's
So
funny. Though, did the waiter come around with just like he pulled out the breadstick like that, like by his nose?
that would have been great. I think next time I get there, I think I have to tell them to do that. So
Yeah.
but the pizza was great. It's a great restaurant. So
Awesome. Shout out to Pinocchio.
mhm,
We can just we'll go ahead and take our break, come back, talk about the swimmer,
mhm.
and get into it. I'll talk to you in a sec, you know.
Let's do it, man.
All right, well, we're back. Dino, last week, like I said earlier, we got to watch your suggestion, or one of the movies from your lot of movies, Hacksaw
Mhm.
Ridge, which means this week it is my turn. And we picked a movie that I really, really like a lot. I only first discovered it maybe a year ago, and I just really fell in love with it. And I know you and I have talked about it a lot
Mhm.
before you even saw it. And that movie is The Swimmer from 1968. It is starring Burt Lancaster and it is directed by Frank Perry. Also written by his wife, Eleanor Perry, and it's based on a story by the author John Cheever, who is pretty popular, at least over here back in the day. But yeah, this was a first time watch for you, Dino.
First time watch, never heard of it before. Like before we obviously talked about it before,
Uh huh.
but I've never heard of it.
Uh huh.
And so it was a first time watch, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and like always, um, guys, this is a spoilery kind of terrain that we're traversing here. So if you want to go watch the movie first, go ahead and pause it right here. Go watch it. Come right back. Hit play and listen to us talk about it because we're gonna spoil this thing all over. Um, but the general plot synopsis of this movie, the film opens in the summertime, it seems, of this really wealthy kind of Connecticut suburb, and and this man is running shirtless through the woods, and he's in a pair of bathing shorts, and that man is played by Burt Lancaster. And when he runs out of this forest, which it seems like he kind of just appears out of nowhere from, he enters the backyard of a couple friends of his. There, he gets the idea while talking to them and looking out over the hills that he can traverse the forest, that by traversing the forest, he can swim in various pools of the houses owned by all his friends, therefore creating a river from where he is back to his home, which he then coined the Lucinda River, named after his wife. So he goes off pool hopping across the county. He goes from one house to the other, and at each house he stumbles upon some old friends. He stumbles into a couple of day parties. He stumbles upon an ex-flame of his, and he really kind of fails to make anything more than just a superficial kind of connection with any of them. He's so obsessed with his journey down the river, and everyone else is so obsessed with kind of just one-upping each other, whether they have a nice lawnmower, a bigger pool, who's making more money, who's vacationing where. But throughout it, he tells people that his wife is back home and his daughters are at home playing tennis when everyone asks how he's been. And everyone seems to be confused when he gives this explanation, and he becomes confused when people throughout his journey start dropping hints that maybe his life is not as peachy perfect as he maybe thought it was. But finally, he ends up at a public pool where he gets berated and attacked by all the pool goers, which essentially forces him to run away frightened. When he runs away from the public pool, he runs across a highway, eventually getting to his home, which has become completely just dilapidated. It's boarded up. It's completely gutted inside. The tennis court that he said his daughters were playing on all day is completely overrun with weeds, and just completely run down. And as he's locked out of his home and he tries to look inside the broken glass, a storm approaches and he falls to the ground, and the camera freeze frames, just like it did on our friend Antoine Doinel in the 400 Blows. Freeze frames on him in the doorway as he sits there in the rainfall. Which, if you're listening to this and you're kind of thinking, what the hell is he talking about, and what exactly was he just rambling about? I'm sure Dino is probably right there alongside you, as am I. Because it's a movie that doesn't really have much plot to it, I guess.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
I definitely agree. And it's like at the beginning, you don't really know, like even until the end, you don't really know like what's happening, like what's going on.
Yeah. And it's a movie that at least I've never seen any, like, before seeing this movie, I had never seen anything like it. Since seeing it,
Mm.
have never seen anything like it since. It really kind of stands alone, and I guess kind of just in general, I'm sort of curious, just what were your general thoughts on the movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What'd you think?
I liked it a lot. It was so great, and I definitely agree with you. Like I haven't seen and like there's nothing like it that I've seen,
Hmm.
like not even like anything I can compare it to.
Yeah.
It's just like its own thing. And like after watching it, I don't know how this movie isn't talked about more, because I've been like in the film Instagram community for like 3 years, and I've like talked about movies beforehand, and I've never heard anyone talk about this movie. And maybe it's just the people I hang out with and talk with, but like I don't know how this movie isn't more popular. Like I don't know why this movie isn't discussed more. It's
I I
yeah,
agree.
it's
No, I was
incredible.
gonna say, yeah, I think that you kind of have to be, I don't know, because it took a long time for me to ever even hear about it for the first time. But everybody that I have heard talk about it speaks about it in such a high regard
Mhm.
that which it didn't do very well when it came out. If that's a surprise to anybody, it did not do great at all. Hold on, let me pull up the um, the actual box office. If it says, it doesn't say, but it says that it was a lackluster box office
Mm.
response. But it's one of those movies that definitely develops like a good cult following, and has definitely like been subject, I think, of some like reappraising. Maybe in like recent kind of years, a lot of people are kind of stumbling upon it now, and I'm glad more people are. And there's an awesome Blu-ray release of it from a company called Grindhouse Releasing that is one of the best physical, I think, releases I've ever purchased. It's really good. Comes with a copy of the score, comes with all these bonus features, a whole documentary on the making of. It's very, very, very cool. But what were some of your favorite moments from the film?
Well, at first, like just the concept of it, like him coming up with the idea of like just pool hopping and creating this river to his house, like that from the get-go, it intrigued me so much, and I thought that idea was like so funny. And
Hmm.
that's where like the confusion came in, because at first I thought this was going to be like a comedy. I thought this was just going to be a comedy movie with this very likable guy that everyone likes and is super popular. And then it just goes on and on and on. It just gets sadder and sadder and sadder. Um, and there are so many great moments. One of them being like the highway scene you mentioned. That was great, and like you really felt just the fear,
Hmm.
like the just the chaos of it. And every pool scene I love, because with every pool you get new characters that he interacts with, and that's the thing that I'm like a sucker for. I love just people in movies going around meeting people, like people they know, people they don't know, and just talking, and like just these interactions between people. And this movie had so much of it, and it was so interesting. And there are so many great scenes, and I would love to hear what some of your favorite ones are.
Yeah, there's a lot of great moments too. Like the intro is something that I always think is like really interesting. The way
Mhm.
that they introduce, like the way that Frank Perry, which we'll get into some of the background too, depending on who shot what, that's kind of up in
Mhm.
the air in terms of direction. But the way that they do present Burt Lancaster, it's filled with like so many questions that to me now I kind of look at it, I'm like, did this guy escape from like a mental hospital and is just like running and shed his clothes like in the woods? Because that's what it
Mhm.
feels like. Like there's no
Sure.
explanation of where he comes from. It's and the way that it's shot too is just so surreal. The way the camera just glides everywhere. It's probably one of my favorite like photographed movies, I think, of like that whole sort of time period.
I agree.
Um, it was really, really wonderfully shot, and there was, um, I think, a lot of those moments where he's kind of those transitioning moments in between those scenes. I think I really like a lot too. Just the way that they shoot that, and all these like overlays, and these shots are dissolving over one another, and the sun and
Mhm.
the trees and the close-ups on that young girl that he's walking around with and running around with for some of the film. And um, I think those are some of my favorite um, sort of moments, and I kind of want to get into some of the specifics of each of those sort of interactions that he has, and kind of get your thoughts on those in particular. And I think as it goes on, and let me know if you agree, each each interaction that he has with the people, they kind of get less nice with each person that he comes into touch with. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Because at the beginning, like everyone seemed to like him,
Hmm.
or they're like nice, and just the way they talk to him, and it just gets like meaner and meaner. And like that, I think it was the final interaction with the woman he had an affair with.
Hmm.
That was just like brutal.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That and it's funny because when you look back at the first one, like you don't expect it to end up where it does, like in the final scene of him returning back home. Like it's just
Yeah.
such a 180. And I don't know. Like it's just it's so interesting. I think one of the really interesting um dynamics in the film and like interactions he has is when he goes around. um Let me see, I think her name was Julie.
Mhm.
She is the young girl.
Babysitter.
What's that? The
Wasn't she the
babysitter.
former babysitter? Yes.
Yeah, she was the babysitter to
Mhm.
Burt Lancaster's kids, and there's a really interesting sort of dynamic there. And I think I was like, oh, that's weird and kind of gross and interesting the first time, but on the second time I was like, I kind of almost saw it. I was like, oh, this is like a real like. or third time, however many times it's been, I was like, I feel like there's something like really kind of like revealing about that relationship in
Hmm.
that I think you really see that Burt Lancaster, because he seems so, I think his first impression is so great. Wouldn't you agree? Like he seems like the most likable, charming, like down to earth kind of guy. Is that kind of what you gathered when you were first introduced to him?
For sure. Like I found him to be very likable and like just a great guy. But then it
Hmm.
was like maybe he isn't the great guy we think he is.
Exactly. And I think it's revealed that the character's name is Ned Merrill.
Mhm.
I think the first time I maybe thought, and I don't know if you can remember because it's been a while since we watched,
Mhm.
uh, but I don't know if you can remember, but that conversation that he has with Julie, the babysitter, was the first time where I kind of thought he might not be a great guy, not just because he's like this dude who's trying to like hit on this girl, but because he's also like, you could tell he's kind of an egomaniac and probably some kind of a narcissist, because he's like, when he finds out about she tells this story of
Mhm.
when she used to babysit, she stole a shirt of his
Yeah.
because it smelled like him or whatever, and she just wanted to have it. And there's this moment where he obviously loves hearing this. Like he loves hearing that she did this because it's just
Mhm.
inflating his ego. And there comes a moment that I caught this time where he asks her if she still has the shirt.
Yeah.
And she
I
says that
remember.
she just threw it away because it's just some shirt or something. And you can kind of see in him, I'm like, oh, that kind of just broke him. Like that sort
Yeah.
of just, I'm like, oh, I was like, he really needed that kind of. Did you catch that when you were watching that scene?
I did. And like you could see in his face, like he wasn't a fan that she threw it away. Like that did something in him. Like that
It, like you said,
he
it destroyed
definitely
him.
for sure, yeah. For sure.
That's a scene too that I think definitely I could probably put up there as one of my favorites. But um there was a lot of cool appearances in this and in the background. Did you do any research into kind of the background or production of this film at all?
I didn't. I was hoping you would tell me
Yeah,
a few
it's a
things.
lot, and I would recommend. There's a lot of other good like documentaries and stuff out
Mhm.
there, or like video essays people have even done on YouTube. That for anyone
Mhm.
listening, I highly recommend. Those are just in depth, you know. And I mentioned earlier for anyone in the U.S., and I hope you guys could get it over in Europe, but the Grindhouse releasing Blu-ray, I recommend everyone gets it. It's what about the print? Where did you watch the movie, by the way?
I watched it through like I think it was Apple TV Plus.
Okay, did you rent it?
I rented it, yes. So it was like
Okay.
a streaming service. I think it was it was either Apple TV or Amazon Prime.
Or okay. So the print was probably pretty good quality. Like, did it look really nice?
It was decent. It was
Okay.
maybe you have like a better version. I need
Okay.
to check out if I can find the Grindhouse release.
I would send it to you, but then I don't have the right region unless you have a region free
I don't.
player. Yeah.
I don't.
I
But
think we've
maybe I
talked
can get
about
it.
this before as well. I feel like that's ringing a bell.
Yeah,
Um, but if there is like one available, like for your region, I highly recommend. It looks really, really good.
that for sure.
Um,
I'm excited to, like you said, there was like a making of documentary or
yeah,
something.
there's a
I'm
whole
excited to
making of
watch
thing.
that.
Yeah, it's because it's kind of wild. So I mentioned earlier that Frank Perry directed it and written by his wife Eleanor Perry, who they were a duo and made some awesome movies together.
Mm.
They ended up after this movie, they did a film called Diary of a Mad Housewife, which is also super dope.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that was the last movie they did together. I think unfortunately they ended up separating after that. Um, but this like movie that they did together was just like the best thing they ever did, and they were kind of a duo. He'd direct, she would write. Um, but Frank Perry did not last all too long in terms of directing. There came a point where Sidney Pollack, the actor and director, for those listening, he directed 3 Days of the Condor. He directed Tootsie. He's directed a lot of awesome movies. Jeremiah Johnson. Oh, I think I mentioned him in like maybe the first or second episode when I brought up the movie. They Shoot Horses, Don't They? That's probably my
Mm.
favorite movie of his that he's directed.
Yeah.
besides Tootsie. But he stepped in and was super young at this time. Burt Lancaster brought him in after Frank Perry had been fired. There's kind of it's all up in the air in terms of who maybe or why he was maybe fired. But the producer ended up firing him, and they brought in Sidney Pollack, and they also recast a lot of the characters in it too, and reshot a lot of the scenes. So
Interesting.
although it's labeled as Frank Perry, this might be, in terms of what we see, more of a Sidney Pollack movie than it actually is a Frank Perry movie. And it kind of feels that way in terms of the direction now that I kind of
Mhm.
think about it. But there were some changes. So there comes a point where he pulls up to a house of those really rich nudists. Do you remember that scene?
I do.
And
Yes.
they have a limo driver or like a chauffeur.
Yeah.
I think that's the same house, right? And he drives them up all the way up like the long driveway up to the
Yeah.
front of the
The one he
house.
confuses. He
Yes,
confused him for someone else. Yeah. I
yes.
remember.
Now that chauffeur ended up being played by a guy named Bernie Hamilton, who was in Starsky and Hutch, I believe. I wasn't too familiar, but it was originally played by Billy D. Williams. Um,
Shit.
and he and that's from Star Wars fame. He I don't know exactly why he got fired, but he ended up getting axed, and they shot everything. So with everything that I'll mention with the other actors, they shot all these scenes. They just then went back and reshot it with Sidney Pollack and a new DP. So Billy D. Williams was replaced by Bernie Hamilton. An actor named Larry Haynes was replaced by an actor named Charles Drake. I forget exactly what character he played. And
Mhm.
then the one that was most notable, and they talk about seemingly the most in some of the behind the scenes stuff, is the final woman at the end of the film, who is his ex like lover, played her name is Shirley, played by an actress named Janice Rule. Now that was originally played by an actress named Barbara Loden, who also, are you familiar with Barbara Loden or her name?
I don't think so.
She directed a film uh that's like an independent film that they essentially say she's like the female version of John Cassavetes. She directed a film called Wanda, and she was married to Elia Kazan, the famous director.
No way.
Now, Elia Kazan and her had a very like tumultuous relationship. I think he was very like abusive to her or something.
Mhm.
Now, according to Eleanor Perry, Sam Spiegel, the director, the producer, and Elia Kazan both didn't want that like Barbara Loden to be in that scene, um, where Ned is kind of being a little rough with her by the pool, and they kind of have that hold on argument. And there was like a bunch of they kept pushing that it had to be toned down, and there was a lot of disagreements. And uh, uh, I think that's what ended up kicking off all of the replacements of everybody else. When they're like,
Mhm.
okay, we're not going to do this, they ended up getting the actress Janice Rule, who I also was not very familiar with. Um, but um, but they ended up replacing her. I wish I had some more information in regards to the whys. I didn't get a chance to rewatch like the making of documentary in the last week, um, but they ended up replacing a lot of these actors, about 4 or 5 actors, brought in a new director, new DP, and then also another little fun fact was Burt Lancaster paid $10,000 when they needed to shoot an extra day and they ran out of money. He just paid for it out of pocket himself to
No
finish the
way.
last day of shooting. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's crazy
Um,
because like watching the movie, I never would have guessed. Like, despite everything that has happened, I don't think like if you don't know those things, with some movies you can feel it. Like there's been like a production hell, but this one I didn't. Maybe that just like flew over my head, but
and it feels so cohesive, doesn't it?
yeah,
Like it
sure.
just flows together really well.
No.
Which I'm gonna rewatch that document, the making of
Mhm.
as well, and I'm gonna come on for episode 4 and or
Mhm.
5 4
Four. Yeah.
episode 4, um and I'm gonna clear up some of the air because I feel like I was probably just rambling and sounded super stupid there. But there was a lot of replacements and whatnot. But I think
Mhm.
one favorite thing about the movie, and I really want to hear you talk about too, is the score of this movie. I think is unbelievable. I think one of my like top maybe five all time scores. I think it is so good.
Really? Okay,
I
I
think it
liked it
is
a lot as well.
incredible.
It is
It's
great.
yes, it is. I don't know. Kind of describe how did you kind of take like kind of describe the feel of it to anyone listening who hasn't maybe hasn't seen it or heard it.
Well, I'm trying to like get into my head because, like I said, it's been a while since we watched it, but I remember, like, especially in those scenes that you mentioned, well, he's like going from pool to pool,
Yeah.
especially the one where like the babysitter tells him like she doesn't want to be with him, where he
Uh,
just goes off like just like wandering, like also almost psychedelic with the horses and
yeah.
things like that.
I
That
forgot
was
about
like
that horse scene. That was super weird.
that was very weird, but it was like the music, everything. It felt very like psychedelic, very like a
It's kind of
dream almost,
surreal.
very surreal. Yeah.
Hmm. It's I think the one thing that it reminds me of, which which we usually bring it up at the end, what movies I think pair well with this. I think
Hmm.
it's tough to think of one for this, but one movie that does pop up is The Graduate. And I think the score is like not the Simon and Garfunkel stuff,
Hmm.
but the actual like score itself, which I think Dave Rusin did.
Hmm.
It very much reminds me of that kind of like this like sick like which is what it is like these pool parties kind of it feels like you're on vacation sort of when you're listening to
Hmm.
like the songs at like the pool parties and by the pool. But then they're just transitioned with these really weird, surreal, like you said,
Yep.
dreamlike kind of sounds. Um, but the score was done by Marvin Hamlish,
Hmm.
who was only 24 um, at the time of this, but he ended up doing a bunch of awesome things. He did "The Way We Were" with Sydney Pollack, which that
Hmm.
ended up being a very famous song by Barbara Streisand. She acted in the movie and also sang that song.
Hmm.
Um, he did the score for The Sting. I think he did the score for some James Bond movies. Um, he ended up doing a whole bunch, but I think this was one of his really early stuff. He was only about 24 years old when he did this, and I really love the score of this movie. I think it's one of my favorite things about it for sure.
Next time, I'm definitely want to rewatch it soon because I
Hmm.
think it's a movie that gets better on rewatch.
Absolutely.
Like when you pick up those little things, because I remember watching it like the first interaction, like if people looked at him, sometimes they gave him like a little weird look.
Hmm.
I was like, why? But then
Yeah.
like when I remember back, like in the end, I was like, maybe like they knew. They
Yeah.
just didn't want like they treated him nicely. They wanted to like be nice to him, but you can see like I think when he mentioned something, I think with his daughters, and one woman they cut to this one woman like giving him a
Hmm.
very weird look. I remember that, and I think on rewatch I need to like pick up on more of those things and the score. I think I definitely need to watch it
Definitely.
again.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Because I guess we kind of talked about the end, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts a little more, you know, diving in a little bit further uh,
Mhm.
in regards to that ending. I mean, were you, I guess as the film was going on, did you have any thoughts on how you thought it would end or what you expected or where it was leading? Or because I feel like it doesn't really offer that much up. I mean, you expect him to get home, but, you know,
It doesn't. I like especially in like the beginning, I had no idea where this was going to go. Like I said, I thought this was going to be like a comedy movie,
mhm,
like him just trying to get from pool to pool, meeting these different people and just having jokes and fun and things like that. But as it goes on, I don't think you can really guess. You can maybe see like, okay, maybe he split up with his wife or maybe something happened there, but I wouldn't have guessed like maybe towards the end, but at the beginning, I think there's like at least for me, like no way I would have guessed what was coming.
mhm.
What was it like for you when you watched it for the first time?
I'm trying to remember. I think kind of the same thing where it was like it was kind of just like, wait, what? Like when he would mention stuff about his wife or his daughters, and that one particular shot that you're mentioning, where they cut to that woman, she literally like looks and like it's, I think almost even someone else is kind of like the husband maybe is even like just kind of let it go. Like it
Mhm.
seems like throughout it there are people who are in on something that he isn't, and I just
Mm.
didn't quite know what that was. And I think it's one of those movies genuinely where I was like, I have no idea, I think, where this is even leading to
Yeah.
um on the first try. But like I said, I think I expected him to get home, but I was like, there has to be something more to it than that, right? Than
Mm.
him just making it home to his wife and kids.
For sure. I
Yeah.
thought maybe like he doesn't even have a home. I think that was my theory. Like
Hmm.
he just goes to these different pools because they mentioned he doesn't have a pool of his own.
Yeah.
He just has a tennis court.
Oh, good point.
And I thought maybe like he doesn't even have a home, or like maybe he was kicked out by his wife. So he
Hmm.
just goes to these different pools because he can't use his own, but then they said he doesn't have one, which I think there was also like a little like how should I say, like the suburban thing where he doesn't have a home or like a pool like they do. So they look down on him a little bit.
Hmm.
So I thought maybe this was gonna be like something like that, but I didn't imagine that ending.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, like, to hear any theories that you might have too. Like, where do you
Mhm.
think he came from in the beginning? Where was he coming from? Why was he, do you think he was just swimming in another pool somewhere? Or do you have any theories in regards to where the hell he came from?
That's a great question because I remember like watching it, I was like, where is he coming from? Like you said, like almost like he escaped from like a mental institution, or he seemed like an animal when he was running
Yeah.
around. Maybe he was somewhere grieving, but why was he in like in his swimsuit, like swim shorts?
Hmm.
That's interesting. I really don't have a theory.
And I'm trying to remember now, was he already wet running through the forest?
I need to rewatch it. I don't
I don't
think was
remember.
he?
I didn't think about that until just now. I wonder if he
Yeah,
was. Maybe he was swimming elsewhere. Um,
that's a good thing to look out for when we watch it again. I
Definitely.
think that could maybe give a hint where he was or what he was doing.
Absolutely. Um, One other scene that I do want to mention before we kind of wrap up
Mhm.
on the movie is there's another scene that I really do enjoy, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it as well. Is a scene where he goes to visit a friend and finds out that the friend isn't there, but their young son is, and this young kid is playing a recorder, I think, or like a clarinet or something. I think it's a recorder, or at least in
Mhm.
America, that's what we call them. I don't know if they had those in Germany. Um, but he's talking to this kid, and he's like, "Oh, can I use your pool?" And the kid says, "Sure." And he finds out that the pool has been drained and
Mhm.
it's empty. And I really like that because it kind of adds sort of a roadblock in a weird way, but it
Yeah.
also creates this really interesting moment with him and this kid. What'd you think of that scene?
I'm glad you mentioned it because that was a scene that I forgot to like when you asked me what my favorite scenes
Hmm.
were. That was definitely one of them because that was like very sweet,
Yeah.
and that's where like his where he was very likable, the way he talked to the kid and the way he cared.
Hmm.
And then the kid wanted to jump into the pool, which would have like he would have broken his legs or something.
Yeah.
He saved him and just sat next to him and just talked to him, and that was like a very sweet but also sad scene.
Yeah. It was, didn't the kid kind of like snap on him? Or like when he said he had to leave or something, the kid like got like really pissed off, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
And then he catches him about to jump or something. It was a cool thing. And there's something really, another kind of interesting moment, which I think it's interesting. I think you really understand a lot, which I'm only thinking about now for the first time. You really get to know a lot about that character Ned through his interactions with younger people.
For sure. Yeah.
You don't really see him open up in that way, but he says something really interesting with this kid after we already had that really interesting scene with Julie, the babysitter, where
Mhm.
he says something. He's like, "Well, we can swim across," and the kid's like, "Well, the pool's empty." And Ned says, he goes, "If you make believe hard enough that something is true, then it is true for you."
Mhm.
And that is literally the entire like ethos of who Ned even is and this character that he seems to believe that his daughters are at home playing tennis, that he's still in a happy relationship with his wife, that everything in
True,
his
yeah.
life is fine. And while everybody else kind of is sort of like giving him like, raising their eyebrows when he says that, it's
Hmm.
still true for him. And he doesn't really seem to ever be bothered by
That's true.
anybody else thinking otherwise.
He lives in
Um,
his own movie in his head. Like he doesn't let other
exactly.
people tell him. He's just like, that's
He's
my
the main
life. And I'm
character,
just gonna pretend it's my life.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, and then I did mention it earlier, but I did love the little freeze frame at the very end, especially after we just talked about the 400 blows, sort of
Hmm.
creating that. I was like, oh, that's funny that the next movie we would watch, or I guess the second movie we would watch after that would have
Yep.
that. I was like, oh, that's funny. But any final thoughts, any final scenes or anything that we didn't mention or anything that you really did enjoy?
Well, that scene with the kid, I like that he taught him how to swim in an empty pool. I think that was nice. And there
Hmm.
was also one scene that I thought was very funny when he gets to the public, like swimming pool at public,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
where first of all he doesn't have money, so they don't let him in. So he borrows money,
yeah.
and then the guy's like, you have to like shower first. So he goes in,
Yes.
showers, he comes back. He's like, shower again, like your feet are dirty. So he goes in, showers again, and like he tells him to spread his toes. Like that was a funny scene.
That was a really funny scene. And I love the guy that he borrows like the dollar from or the 50 cents.
Yeah.
And then it comes back later that clearly he's loaned Bert a lot, or Ned a lot of money. Because the wife initially is like, don't do it, don't do it. You won't get it
Mhm.
back. I thought
And
that
then
was
he
funny.
snaps at him. Like at first he's nice to him, but
Yeah.
then like he says some things about his wife, and then he snaps and like tells him like
What it
the
is.
reality. And then that was also a very sad scene.
That was a really intense scene because and that guy in particular, like, he's the only guy who's really trying to keep it together. Like the wife, he's trying to like be like, hey, stop it. To
Mhm.
the friends, he's like, guys, stop. Like he doesn't want to do this to him. But then
Yeah.
I think Ned maybe says something, or eventually he's just like, he can tell he's so far gone that he's
Mhm.
like, all right, screw it. Like, dude, your life is like your kids are drunks, like drunk driving around everywhere, your daughters or whatever, the
I
issue
think he
is. But
insults his wife or something because I remember him saying like, "Don't talk to my wife like that,"
that's that's what it was.
and then he snaps.
He said, I think he called his wife crazy or something. He's
Yeah.
like, this woman's crazy. And he's like, all right, well, now don't call my wife that.
Yeah.
That's right. You're right. That is what it
Yeah.
was. But yeah, man, The Swimmer is a real interesting movie. I'm glad we finally got to see. Oh, one other thing I forgot.
Yeah.
Very famous comedian, Joan Rivers, has a brief cameo. Are you familiar with Joan Rivers?
I'm not. No.
Very famous comedian, at least here in the States, but I
Mhm.
think maybe worldwide. She's since has passed away by now. But she was just like a real cutting, ruthless. I'll send you some links on Instagram. You'll get a good kick. She was super funny. You might have seen her even cameoed in some other movies. Like she would pop up in random places, but she
Let me look her up.
yeah, look her up. She has a small cameo in this movie. I think it was before she really even popped off. Um, but a
Oh yeah, I've
very
seen her
young
before.
Joan Rivers is in it. She plays a woman named Joan. Um, and they have a funny conversation, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it is that they talk about, but she's got the same exact voice. And but it's at one of the pool parties. Um, yeah, she and I
Oh
think what it was is he asks her to join, and she's like super down, and then he
yeah,
talks just like a little bit longer, and she's like, "Oh no, you're crazy." It's like you're a crazy person. It kind of like walks away.
I remember that she tries to hit on him, and then she's like, "Oh, you're crazy." So
Yeah.
I know that actress, like, or like comedian. I've seen her before.
Yes. She was
But
super famous and was in um a ton of stuff. I'm trying to pull up the filmography now because I'm trying to picture her. Oh, she was in Shrek 2. I know you're a big fan of Shrek. She was in Shrek
interesting.
2. Voiced
Who did she
somebody.
play?
I'm
Or
gonna
like
look it up
voice?
right now. She voiced uh it says Joan Rivers playing Joan Rivers.
Maybe because they're like in the version of
Oh,
Hollywood.
I
So maybe
she's the okay, this makes sense. She's the red carpet announcer. Is there a red carpet in Shrek 2?
I think so because they're like in their version of Hollywood, like far, far away. So I think there's like
Okay.
actors and actresses.
Okay, because I was gonna say Joan Rivers like did that stuff. Like that was like kind of
Mhm.
her thing, where she would be
Interesting.
like on red carpets and then she would just like roast the hell out of people. Like that was kind of her shtick, I think. So
Oh,
that makes sense
interesting.
that she
Okay.
would play that. I'll send you some clips afterwards.
Mhm.
She's super funny. Um,
Yeah, I'm excited.
but yes, I wanted to mention that she is in that movie as well. And like I
Mhm.
said, next week when I talk about my movies that I watched for the week, I'll shorten it and kind of brush up on some of the casting stuff because I am a little blurry on it. I did look some up a couple weeks ago when we were gonna record initially, but I've kind of forgotten and like I said, didn't
No
get to
worries.
watch the making of. But maybe we'll both have the chance to check that out before the next
Mhm.
recording. But yeah, so I'm glad you liked it. On a scale of 1 to 10 pools, how
Swimming pools.
much is Ned literally you?
Well, I'll maybe give him half a swimming pool just for his idea go from swimming pool to swimming pool because that was funny, and I think that I just like that idea a lot, and that's
Hmm.
maybe an idea that I would have, just like a funny idea, but I can't give him more than that because he is not literally me. How about you?
I'll give him like maybe 1.5 pools
Hmm.
because there is something cool that you said earlier when you're like, it's like he's in his own movie in his head. I'm like,
True.
I can see that. I can
Mhm.
kind of feel that. I vibe that. You know what? I'll give him 2 pools. I think 2 pools. I'm literally Ned.
I'll pump it up to one swimming pool.
I think that's fair. I think he deserves at least 1 pool because he
One
is.
for sure.
I think he's kind of a douchebag. We learn, but
Hmm.
he is pretty sympathetic. I will give him that. I really do
That's
feel
true.
for him, and I do feel very much attached to him through that movie.
Especially in certain
Um,
scenes, like with the little boy he interacts with.
it's a
Like that
great
was very
scene.
sweet. Like he isn't just like a bad guy. So
Yeah. You know what? I'll give him 2.5 pools. That little kid, he's half
mhm.
a person, so I'll give him a half a pool to add on to
Fair
that
enough.
for that scene.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but yeah, I'm glad we finally got to watch it, man. I'm so excited. I think you might be the first like friend of mine I think that has seen this movie. Like I've told so many people, I think you're the first one
Really,
that's actually has watched it because I don't know that I've ever talked about this movie with anybody ever before.
you have to tell him because I'm definitely going to recommend it more,
Yeah.
especially on my Instagram page. I think I'm going to put it up and next week because of your role.
Hmm.
I'm going to talk about that movie, and I think more people need to see it because it's a movie definitely worth talking about
Agreed.
and it deserves more appreciation.
Agreed. Well, guys, again, this was The Swimmer, 1968, directed by Frank Perry, allegedly. That's what it's billed as, but it really seems to be more of a Sidney Pollack movie. Starring Burt Lancaster. You guys can watch it if you're in the States. You can watch it on Tubi. And if you are elsewhere, I guess, Dino, where did you rent it on Amazon or Apple?
I think you can rent it on both,
Okay.
um, either Amazon or Apple TV.
Okay.
Because Tubi isn't available here, I tried using Tubi because it popped up the link,
Hmm.
but it's not available over here. But I think you'll find it.
Okay. And then also, like I mentioned, if you can go over to Grindhouse Releasing and or Amazon, you can find it on Amazon, but it's the Grindhouse Releasing Blu-ray of this is impeccable. It's so good how it looks. So many good special features. Highly recommend. They did a really good job with it. Um, but
I'm
man,
gonna
I'm
see if I can
excited.
order that one.
I was literally just looking it up now while you were talking about where you rented it, trying to see. Like, I
Mhm.
just put in Grindhouse releasing The Swimmer Germany, like just trying to see what I could find. But I'll do some research after. It looks really cool. But and then I mentioned it earlier, but I think a couple movies that I wanted to shout out that maybe would pair well with this. I think that would work as a good triple feature. And I don't know when this comes out. This could be a little preview, or maybe it'll already be teased by my guy Dino on his Instagram page, but there are 3 films, including this one, that I think pair very, very well with each other in a triple feature. So maybe you get the inside scoop here before you see it on his page if you are listening, or I don't know. Maybe we'll just bleep this out. I don't know. But
Mhm.
I think this movie pairs really well with The Graduate, which I did mention earlier, and also would
Yeah.
pair well with a very good movie called La Piscine that came out the following year with Alain Delon. Um, which is a fantastic movie, all of which not all centered on pools, but The Graduate's not fully centered on pools, but there's a lot of pool stuff in there.
Includes
Um,
it, definitely.
yeah. But the only real rec I can say, watch this movie if you can in the summer. I think this is one of my favorite summer movies,
Mhm.
for sure. But Dino, it has come to that point in the pod where we now pick next week's
Mhm.
film. And
Should
this week
I?
I had, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I
No,
can
go
run the
ahead.
generator this week, and maybe you can tell us which movie
Let's do
should
it.
be it.
Let me pull up your list of movies.
Mhm.
Um,
Just to change things up a bit.
yep. All right. So like I said, so this is Dino's pick. Um, and he brought in 20 movies. For anyone who's new to the pod or hasn't listened, we each have a list of 20 movies that we've brought to the table. And each week we spin a random number generator to pick one of those movies off that list by random. And this week is Dino's turn. So Dino, go ahead and spin that generator, and I'll see which movie we're picking from your list.
The number is number 2.
Ooh,
Movie would that be? I think I know which one.
I'm excited, kind of like how you were excited with The Swimmer, because you have raved about this movie quite a bit to me, and that is 2017's Columbus.
Uh, nice. Okay, I'm very excited to rewatch Columbus. You
Heck
haven't
yeah! Is
seen it,
that is
right?
that what you? I've never seen it. Is that the movie
No,
that
I
you thought
think
it was number two?
I thought it was Chip and Dale Rescue
Okay.
Plan. I thought that was
You might have suggested that one in equal amount to me as Columbus, to be fair. You might have equally raved about it to
Kirby,
me.
Kirby, but I'm very excited for Columbus because I think you're gonna like it.
I'm very excited. Is this the same director who did After Yang this past
It
year?
is Coconada.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm very, very interested. And I know because we've talked about it before, you have kind of a cool, sort of interesting connection to this town slash movie that
true. Yeah,
I won't spoil, we can get into it next week on episode 4. But I do think that's something really interesting and that I think everyone's going to want to hear.
there is a
But
very interesting little story. Um,
yes, which I very
we'll
much
get
enjoy.
to
So
it.
I'm excited to rehear you tell that again. Um, but I'm super excited to see this movie. Came out in 2017. Can you give us a little log line of what to expect from this movie? What's it about?
Well, I'm not gonna say what it's about.
Okay.
I want to keep that a surprise, but it's a very calm movie.
Okay.
It's not hectic, not at all. It's very calming and very spiritual in a sense, not in terms of plot, but just like the way the
The
movie
experience.
flows, the
Hmm.
experience, lots of nature, lots of still shots. And it's a very calming movie. It's one of my comfort movies.
Awesome.
And it's also, if you like architecture, if you're
Yes.
interested in architecture at all, it's going to be very interesting. So,
Awesome. Well, I am super excited. This has been on the watch list for a while.
mhm.
Are there any popular names in it that we might know in terms of actors?
Well, Haley Lou Richardson is in it.
Oh, that's right. Love
Yeah,
her.
she's also an After Yang, so Kokonada likes to work with
Oh,
her.
interesting.
And um, blanking on his name right now. Let me just look it up. John Cho.
Oh,
He
that's right. John Cho.
he's in
Love
it.
John Cho.
Me too. He's the main guy. And those are like the main
The
two
main
people. I
two.
don't think.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a,
I'm super excited to check it out. Um for anybody out there who's listening and wants to watch with us and be tuned in um by the time the episode drops. If you're in the States, I believe Columbus is streaming on Showtime. That seems to be the big one. Um, and Paramount Plus for anybody in the States who is interested in watching that. Um,
there's also a university streaming service where you can, I don't know what it's called, that you can access with your university
like
email
email.
address over there. Yeah, because I remember
Oh,
watching it through there, but I don't remember the name. Maybe you know. It's where you
I
can access like a library and like a lot of old movies.
It's not movie, is it?
No, it's not a movie.
I
Um,
know what you're talking about too, and you can use
Canopy,
Canopy. That's it. Yes.
Canopy. That's it.
Yes. You can
Because that's
also
how
access that with a library card as well. If you don't have a college email,
exactly.
you can
It's on
access
there. At
that with
least
a
it
library card.
was on there. I don't know if it
Okay.
still is, but I think it is because that's how I watched it back in the day.
Okay. Cool. That's good to know.
Mm.
Guys, check that. I've never used it, I don't think, but I know people who have. And it seems like an awesome list of movies that they constantly have on there.
They have a lot
Um,
of movies, and in terms of Germany, you can. It's on Amazon Prime Video.
okay.
If you get the Real Ease channel, I have no clue. It's Real
Is this
EYZ.
a TV channel?
It's a channel you can book with Amazon Prime, and there's a
Oh,
7-day free trial.
interesting.
Then you can check out the movie. I have no idea how you pronounce it. Release? I don't know, but it's RealeYZ.
Real easy.
Release, something like that. So you can check it out on Amazon Prime Video.
Cool. Yeah, and same here. If you don't have Paramount or Showtime or any of those, I know I don't have either. You
Mhm.
can probably just rent it on Apple or Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
But I'm super excited, Dino. As always, it's always awesome to talk to you and to get to talk movies and to finally get to talk about one of my favorites. I'm super excited that we got to do that, and I can't wait to see Columbus.
Well, thank you for your movie recommendation. It's a movie I'm definitely going to think about a lot, and it's a very great movie, and I'm very excited to rewatch Columbus and hear your thoughts next week.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening, for tuning in to these past few episodes, and for checking out the pod. And
We're on Spotify now, so
yes, that is right.
yeah.
Dino got us on the old Spotify. All you got to do is just search "Literally Me" podcast. I think it'll pop up right away. It came up fine for me. But yeah, that's all you got to do. Type it in. Same with Apple Podcasts. I believe we're on there as well.
We're not yet, but I'm gonna get to it
Never
this week.
mind.
So by the time people hear it, we're gonna be out on
Okay,
Apple.
so
So
then I
you are
take back
right.
my never mind. Never mind the never
You're
mind. We
correct.
are on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, Spotify, most importantly, we are on there. Just type in "Literally Me" podcast and then click on podcasts and shows. I'm doing it as we speak, so I'm looking
Mhm.
to, and then we're there. I think I don't quite know what I'm
So
searching for. It's all over the place, but we're on there, and follow us both on Instagram. We'll have links on there and whatnot. But Dino, good talking to you as always, and I'll talk to you next week when we talk Columbus.
great talking to you, and until next week.
Awesome. See you, man.
Bye bye.